Do you ever think about death? What do you feel when you do? Is that a cold dread? That knot in your gut when the thought of death creeps in? It's a fear buried deep, a terror of the unknown, or something else. We've been fed many lies, empty promises, or just outright silence about what truly happens when we draw our last breath. But what if everything you've been told is a deliberate deception? What if death isn't a final curtain, but a brutal psychological test? For over 1,000 years, a forbidden manuscript has guarded the truth. Not a vague spiritual treatise, but a precise map of the first 49 days after death. This isn't some New Age fantasy. This is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was locked away, reserved for a select few, because its truth was too raw, too unsettling for the unprepared mind. It reveals a terrifying secret. The moment you die is not the end. It's the beginning of an examination, one that determines if you break free from this relentless cycle of existence, or if you plunge back into rebirth, blind and utterly helpless. Most people fail this test, not because they're weak, but because they're clueless. They don't recognize the illusions. They don't grasp that everything they see, hear, and feel after death is a projection of their own mind. By the time they figure it out, it's already too late. If this ancient text is to be believed, then those first moments after death are more critical than your entire life. And it all starts with one profound, terrifying instant. The moment you leave your body behind. The first moments after death. The instant you die, reality doesn't just cease. You don't just vanish. Instead, something primal takes over. Ancient texts describe it. For over 1,000 years, you'll feel weightless, detached, like waking from a dream, but sharper, more vivid, your heartbeat gone, your breath stilled, yet you are intensely aware. You'll know something has fundamentally changed. Your mind, however, will claw at acceptance, refusing to believe it. If you've ever had an out-of-body experience, this moment will feel chillingly familiar. But this time, there is no return ticket. And then it erupts, a blinding radiant light. So powerful, so all-consuming, your very being seems to dissolve into its brilliance. The Tibetan Book of the Dead calls this the clear light of reality. This is your ultimate chance. If you recognize it, if you surrender to it completely, you will merge. You will transcend the entire cycle of birth and death. Instant liberation, instant enlightenment, forever free. This moment of absolute freedom happens the instant you die, but almost no one recognizes it. Why? Because we are programmed for fear. We are conditioned to recoil from the unknown. Your soul will panic. It will cling to its memories, its identity, its desperate unfinished desires. And the second fear takes hold, the illusions begin. You'll start to hear things, whispers, echoes of voices. They'll feel familiar, yet distorted, as if calling from behind a veil. The world around you will warp. The light will dim, replaced by forms, patterns, shadows, glimpses of people or places you once knew. But none of it is real. Not yet. Your mind is grasping, searching for meaning. And in doing so, it begins to create the very reality that will define the rest of your journey. This is where most souls get lost. Instead of seeing death as a chance for liberation, they fall into utter confusion. They crave comfort in the familiar. And the mind obliges. It projects the world they knew, recreating familiar sights, faces, voices. Some even see the religious figures they worshipped in life. They don't realize these are just manifestations of their own subconscious beliefs. If they only knew the truth, that none of it is real, that they are being tested, they could let go. Instead, they follow these visions deeper into the Bardo, the intermediate state, the realm between death and rebirth. The first few moments after death are paramount. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that awareness is the only key. Those who have prepared can pierce the illusions and break free. But for the unprepared, for those still clinging to their past lives, what comes next is inevitable. They will traverse a 49-day journey, a series of visions that will either guide them toward enlightenment or trap them in yet another cycle of rebirth. The Bardo, the realm of unstable reality. You are now in the Bardo, the space between one life and the next. Time no longer functions as you knew it. Seconds can stretch into eternity. Days can pass in an instant. You have no body, no voice, only awareness. But here's the crushing problem. Most people don't realize they've died. They're trapped in a dreamlike haze, clinging to the echoes of their past life, incapable of accepting that everything they once knew is utterly gone. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the Bardo as a shifting, unstable realm, a place where reality bends and distorts, where thoughts become tangible, where your own mind fabricates every experience, every fear, every desire, every hidden emotion buried in life now takes on terrifying form. This journey through the Bardo lasts exactly 49 days, a process that unfolds in distinct stages. And for most, it is pure terror. In the beginning, there is only confusion. The soul tries to return home, to its family, its loved ones. It lingers around familiar places, trying to speak, trying to be seen. But no one responds, no one hears. And the agonizing realization slowly sinks in. This is not a dream. This is death. But even then, the mind resists. It clings to its identity, refusing to accept the inevitable. It seeks comfort, logic, explanations, anything to hold on. But the Bardo offers no comfort. It is not a place of rest. It is a place of brutal transition, where the soul must confront itself in its rawest form. At first, the experience can be neutral, even peaceful. No physical pain, no suffering, just awareness. Some describe this stage as floating through a vast open space, a formless void, where thoughts ripple out like waves in an infinite ocean. But then, slowly, visions begin to emerge. The shifting visions, from peace to terror. The first visions are gentle, welcoming, beautiful, radiant beings appear. What some might interpret as angels, enlightened masters, divine guides. These figures emanate warmth, wisdom, an overwhelming sense of peace. They offer a way out, a path to transcendence. But the soul must recognize them for what they are, reflections of its own higher consciousness. If the soul understands this, it can merge with them, dissolving into higher awareness, escaping the cycle of reincarnation forever. But most don't. They hesitate, they doubt, and hesitation is all it takes. The visions begin to change, the radiant beings fade. In their place, shadows emerge. The peaceful forms grow distorted. Their faces contort into grotesque expressions. The once soothing voices become whispers of doubt and fear. What was once a paradise begins to twist into something far darker. This is the next stage of the Bardo, the test of illusions. These terrifying figures are not demons. They are not punishments. They are projections of your soul's own mind, its regrets, its hidden guilt, its unprocessed fears. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns that everything experienced in the Bardo is a reflection of one's own consciousness. It is not an external judgment, but an internal confrontation. This is where the journey becomes perilous. Because the more fear takes hold, the stronger the illusions become. The Bardo is not just a place of transition, it is a mirror that reveals everything the soul refuses to face. And for most, that reflection is unbearable. The real test is about to begin, and what the soul sees next will seal its fate. At first, the visions feel divine. The soul sees celestial landscapes, radiant light, beings of pure compassion. These luminous figures don't speak with words. Their presence radiates an overwhelming sense of peace. Some who experience near-death states describe them as angels, enlightened masters, even gods. But in truth, they are neither saviors nor judges. They are manifestations of your soul's own highest potential, reflecting the light of its purest state. If the soul recognizes them, it can transcend. But recognition demands clarity. and clarity is elusive when the mind is clouded by fear. For those who spent their lives chasing desires, fearing death, or clinging to identity, the illusions begin to distort. The radiant beings remain, but their forms start to shift. The soul sees them flicker, twisting in and out of shapes, as if reality itself is unraveling. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they begin to fade, and in their place, the wrathful visions emerge, the wrathful deities, confronting your inner demons. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this moment in chilling detail. As the days pass in the Bardo, the comforting figures vanish, replaced by dark, monstrous entities. These beings are terrifying beyond anything the soul has ever encountered. They roar with inhuman voices, their faces twisted in expressions of rage and chaos. Some have multiple heads, countless arms, eyes that burn like fire. They appear as demons, executioners, relentless pursuers, and they strike terror into the heart of the unprepared soul. This is where most souls panic. They run, they plead, they scream. But there is no escape, because there is nothing to escape from. These terrifying figures are not real enemies. They do not exist outside the mind. They are projections of your soul's own unresolved fears, its hidden guilt, its buried regrets, every moment of deception, cruelty, selfishness from the past life takes form in the Bardo, appearing as something external, something attacking. But the attack is self-created, the horror is self-inflicted, and the most dangerous part? The more the soul fights, the stronger the visions become. Fear fuels the illusion, terror gives it power. The only way to escape is not to run, but to recognize. Those who realize the truth, who understand that these entities are nothing more than shadows of the mind, watch them dissolve instantly, like mist burned away by the sun. The illusions vanish the moment the soul stops believing in them. But almost no one understands this in time. They see only the nightmare, not the lesson hidden within it. This is the second major test of the afterlife. The first was recognizing the clear light, a test of awareness. The second is recognizing the illusions of fear, a test of self-mastery. Those who fail this test are dragged further into the Bardo, descending deeper into the cycle of karma, unable to break free. For the majority, the terror lasts for weeks. The Book of the Dead states that by the third or fourth week, the soul reaches its next challenge, a full review of its past life. And this time, there is nowhere to hide. There is no judge, no divine courtroom, no higher being deciding your fate. What happens next is far more profound and far more terrifying. The Great Mirror, the unavoidable reckoning. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes it as the Great Mirror, a moment when the soul is forced to confront the full weight of its existence. At first, it seems like nothing is happening. The wrathful illusions begin to fade. For a moment, the soul feels as though it has escaped. But then a new experience takes hold, one more vivid, more intense than anything before. It is not a vision, it is not a dream, it is reliving. The soul is pulled backward through time, through every action, every thought, every emotion it ever created. But this is not memory, it is full immersion. The soul does not just remember what it did in life, it experiences it all over again. Every moment of kindness, every act of cruelty, every decision made in secret is now felt completely, not only from its own perspective, but from the perspective of everyone it ever affected. If you caused pain, you will feel that pain. If you brought joy, you will feel that joy. But there is no filter, no way to justify or excuse past choices. Everything is raw, immediate, undeniable. This is not punishment. It is the truth. The soul is not being judged by some external force. It is judging itself. The Tibetan texts explain that for most, this experience is agonizing. We spend our lives avoiding responsibility for our actions, justifying our mistakes, burying our guilt. But in death, There is no place to hide. You do not get to explain why you acted the way you did. You do not get to argue, deflect, or reason your way out of it. You only get to feel. For some, this experience is blissful. Those who lived with compassion, honesty, and wisdom are flooded with peace, as every positive action returns to them like waves of light. But for others, it is a torment beyond anything they could have imagined, not because they are being punished, but because the weight of their own actions crashes down upon them. This is the reckoning, and it is unavoidable. But here's where it gets even more shocking. According to the Tibetan teachings, this life review does not just affect the past, it also determines the future. By the time the soul has relived its entire existence, it is no longer neutral. It is deeply conditioned by the emotions it has just re-experienced. If the soul emerges from this review filled with guilt, regret, or attachment, it will be drawn back into the cycle of reincarnation. The heavier the burden, the lower the realm it will return to. Some are reborn into suffering, into poverty, into struggle, not because of external judgment, but because their own mind state pulls them toward it. The soul is choosing without realizing it. This is why the life review is not just a reflection. It is a test to see if the soul can let go, if it can accept its past without attachment, if it can release the burden of regret, of fear, of unfinished desires. Those who pass the test move toward liberation. Those who fail are pulled back into another life, another body, another cycle of struggle. This is why spiritual traditions emphasize preparing for death long before it arrives. Because when the moment comes, when the great mirror is placed in front of you, what you see is no longer within your control. It has already been written by the life you lived. And by the 4th or 5th week in the Bardo, the final test begins. The soul now faces its ultimate choice: to break free or be reborn. The final crossroads: escape or rebirth. The Bardo is almost over. The illusions have played their tricks. The soul has faced its past, relived every joy, every sorrow, every hidden thought that shaped its existence. Now, after weeks of drifting through the in-between, the moment of decision arrives. This is the final test, the one that determines everything. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this stage is described as the most crucial and most difficult moment of all. The soul now stands at a crossroads. It must make a choice: either recognize the illusions and break free forever, or give in to its desires and fall back into the cycle of reincarnation. But here's the crushing problem. Most don't realize they are making a choice. By this point, the illusions have become so overwhelming, so convincing, that the soul barely remembers it is in the Bardo at all. The visions now take on a new form, one that feels different from everything before. They are no longer terrifying deities or fragmented hallucinations. Instead, they become familiar, comforting, even tempting. The Book of the Dead warns that in these final days, the soul will be offered a way out. But it is a trap. It sees visions of loved ones calling it back. Familiar places appear, drawing it in with warmth and nostalgia. The soul feels a deep longing, a pull towards something recognizable. These aren't just hallucinations. They are glimpses of the next life it is about to enter. The karmic forces have already begun shaping the next incarnation, weaving the conditions of the soul's return. If the soul clings to these visions, if it allows itself to be pulled in, it is instantly swept into a new body, a new life, another cycle of forgetting. Rebirth happens instantly. The process is automatic. The moment the soul latches onto a desire, a fear, or an attachment, it is pulled into a new womb, a new reality, with no memory of the choice it just made. The Book of the Dead describes this as falling into unconsciousness, a moment of deep forgetfulness, where the past life dissolves and a new one begins. It is as if waking from a dream with no recollection of where it just came from. And so the cycle begins again: birth, suffering, death, and another return to the Bardo. But for the few who are prepared, the final test is different. Those who understand what is happening see through the illusion. They recognize the visions as mere projections, tricks of the mind designed to keep them trapped. They do not cling to the comfort of past attachments, nor do they recoil in fear. They remain still, aware, detached. And in that moment, something incredible happens. The illusions collapse. The karmic forces lose their grip. The pull toward rebirth fades. And the soul, free from attachment, free from fear, transcends the cycle completely. This is what the Tibetan masters call liberation. It is not a place, not a heaven, not an afterlife in the way most people think of it. It is simply awakening to what was always there, a state beyond illusion, beyond duality, beyond suffering. But almost no one reaches this state, because to do so requires something that most people never prepare for. Awareness at the moment of death, the ability to recognize the trap before it closes. And this is why, for over 1,000 years, these teachings were hidden. Because if people truly understood the truth about death, it would shatter everything. The forbidden knowledge, why it was hidden. The next stage of this journey isn't just about what happens after death. It's about why this knowledge was forbidden for centuries. For over 1,000 years, these teachings were locked away, reserved for only the most advanced spiritual practitioners, hidden from the masses, censored by religious institutions. Even today, most people have never heard of them. And there's a reason for that. The Tibetan Book of the Dead was never meant for the ordinary mind. It was considered too powerful, too dangerous for those who were unprepared. Because if people truly understood what happens after death, it would shatter everything, their beliefs, their fears, their entire perception of reality. Think about it. If death is not an end, if it is not a punishment, if there is no divine judgment, then what happens to the control systems built on those very ideas? Religions would crumble, governments would lose power, society as we know it would unravel. For centuries, religious institutions have preached about heaven and hell, about divine punishment, about the need to obey higher authorities to secure a place in the afterlife. These narratives serve a purpose: control. If people believe that an external force dictates their fate after death, they will follow, they will conform, they will fear. But what if the truth is that no one is judging you but yourself? That the afterlife is not about punishment or reward, but simply your own mind reflecting back at you. This knowledge was kept hidden because it would destroy the idea that salvation comes from an external source. It would force people to accept something much more terrifying, that they are fully responsible for their own fate. And that's not all. Modern science is beginning to confirm aspects of these ancient teachings. Near-death experiences, NDEs, are filled with eerily similar descriptions. People report seeing the clear light, encountering their life review, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace or fear, depending on their actions in life. Even cutting-edge quantum physics is starting to suggest that consciousness is not confined to the brain, that it may persist beyond death, that it may operate outside the limits of time and space. For centuries, this knowledge was dismissed as superstition. But now, the lines between ancient wisdom and modern science are starting to blur. So why don't more people know about this? Because the system is designed to keep you distracted, to keep you focused on the material world, on temporary pleasures, on meaningless fears, to keep you chasing money, status, validation, so that by the time death arrives, you are completely unprepared. The biggest lie ever told about death is that it's a mystery. It's not. The Tibetan masters mapped it out over 1,000 years ago. They understood that the first 49 days after death follow a precise structure, that the mind shapes its own afterlife, that awareness is the only key to freedom, and yet almost no one is preparing for it, because the real secret is this: if you are not conscious in life, you will not be conscious in death, and that means the cycle will repeat over and over again. But for those who understand the truth, for those who begin preparing now, there is another way. What comes next is even more important. If this knowledge is real, then the next question isn't just about what happens after death. It's about whether we're failing the test entirely. The Bardo of life. Are you already trapped? If the Tibetan Book of the Dead is right, then most of us are already doomed to repeat this cycle. Not because we are weak, not because we are unworthy, but because we are completely unprepared. Look around. How many people spend their lives even thinking about death, let alone preparing for it? Society has conditioned us to fear it, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist. We distract ourselves with work, entertainment, money, and meaningless pleasures, all while knowing that one day our time will come. And when it does, we will be as lost as the billions before us, blinded, confused, and caught in the same trap. Because the real test doesn't happen after death. It's happening right now. The Bardo is not just a place in the afterlife. It is a state of mind. The same illusions that deceive the soul in death are already deceiving us in life. The fear that keeps souls running from the wrathful visions. It's the same fear that controls people every day. The attachment that pulls souls back into reincarnation. It's the same attachment that keeps people chasing money, fame, and temporary pleasures. The inability to recognize illusions. It's the same blindness that keeps people believing everything they are told, never questioning the reality in front of them. If you are not conscious now, you will not be conscious after death. This is why so few people escape. The Book of the Dead teaches that the same habits, fears, and desires that shape our daily lives also shape what happens after we die. Those who live in ignorance die in ignorance. Those who are controlled by fear in life will be controlled by fear in death. And those who live chasing illusions will continue chasing them after their body is gone. The cycle is relentless. It is perfectly designed to keep us trapped. And the worst part? We are doing it to ourselves. But here's the truth. Most will never understand. The cycle is not unbreakable. The Tibetan masters left behind these teachings for a reason, so that the few who are ready can wake up. And the first step is to see reality for what it really is. Most people will continue living the way they always have. They will tell themselves they have time, that they will think about death later, that right now there are more important things to focus on. And then, in an instant, their life will be over, and they will enter the Bardo, just as lost, just as confused as every soul before them. But for those who wake up now, who begin to break the cycle before it's too late, everything changes, because preparation does not happen after death. It happens while you are still here. And that preparation is not about religion or dogma or rituals. It is about awareness, about seeing the illusions for what they are, about breaking free from the fears, the desires, the false identities that keep us trapped, not just in this life, but in the next. Because the question is no longer what happens after death. The real question is, are we already dead? Most will move on and forget what they've just learned. They'll return to their distractions, their routines, their programmed existence. But the few who understand will know that this moment is a turning point, the path to liberation, preparing in life. Now the question becomes even more urgent. If the way we live determines what happens when we die, then how do we prepare? How do we escape the cycle before it's too late? The answer is simpler than you think. If death is a test, then life is the study guide. But the problem is most people don't even know they're being tested. They live as if life is endless, as if death is some distant event that won't come for a long time, and then one day, it does. The Tibetan masters taught that the only way to be conscious in death is to be conscious in life. If you spend your life running from reality, distracting yourself with temporary pleasures, and avoiding deep self-reflection, then when the moment comes, you will be completely unprepared. You will cling to your identity, to your fears, to your regrets, and in doing so, you will be pulled back into the cycle, lost in illusion once again. But there is another way. The first step to preparing for death is detachment, not in the sense of rejecting life, but in the sense of not being controlled by it. Most people are enslaved by their desires. They chase money, validation, status, relationships, thinking these things will bring happiness. But in the Bardo, none of it matters. The only thing that determines your fate is the state of your consciousness. The more attached you are to the material world, the harder it will be to let go. And the harder it is to let go, the more likely you are to be reborn into another life of struggle, another cycle of forgetting. Detachment does not mean giving up everything and living in isolation. It means mastering your mind, learning to control your thoughts instead of letting them control you. It means understanding that nothing in this world is permanent, not your body, not your possessions, not even your identity. And once you truly grasp this, you will stop fearing death. The second step is awareness. The Bardo is a realm of illusions, but so is life. Right now, everything you see, everything you believe, is a projection of your mind, shaped by conditioning, fears, and external influences. If you do not learn to see through the illusions now, you will not see through them in death. Meditation, self-inquiry, and deep reflection are the keys to breaking free. Not as religious practices, but as training for the final test. In the same way an athlete trains their body before a competition, the mind must be trained before it faces the afterlife. Because in that moment, your thoughts become your reality. If you have spent your life reacting with fear, doubt, and confusion, that is exactly what will consume you in death. But if you have spent your life cultivating clarity, presence, and detachment, then in the Bardo, you will recognize the illusions for what they are. You will not run. You will not cling. You will remain still, aware, and free. And that is the difference between those who escape and those who remain trapped. The third and final step is acceptance. Death is not something to be feared, nor is it something to avoid thinking about. It is the most important moment of your existence. The moment when everything is revealed. If you live in fear of it, you will be ruled by fear in the afterlife. But if you embrace it as the natural transition that it is, you will approach it with peace instead of panic. The ancient masters spent their lives preparing for this moment, not because they were obsessed with death, but because they understood that life and death are the same thing. One cannot be mastered without the other. And that is why modern society keeps people distracted. Because a world full of people who do not fear death is a world full of people who cannot be controlled. If you understand this, then you are already different from most. You are already waking up. But there is still one more truth you must know. Because everything we have discussed, everything about the Bardo, about illusions, about breaking free, is meaningless unless you know this final secret. The ultimate secret, death reveals you. Most people will never prepare for death. They will live their lives blindly, consumed by distractions, chasing illusions, fearing what they do not understand. And when the moment comes, they will be thrown into the Bardo, confused, lost, and unprepared, just as they were in life. But here's the final truth. Death does not change you. It only reveals you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead does not describe an afterlife in the way most people think. It does not promise a paradise for the good or a hell for the wicked. It does not place judgment on anyone. Because the Bardo is not an external place. It is the mirror of your own consciousness. Everything you will experience after death, the clear light, the peaceful deities, the terrifying illusions, the life review, and the pull toward reincarnation, is nothing but a reflection of the mind you carried in life. If you lived in fear, you will die in fear. If you lived in attachment, you will die clinging to what is already gone. If you lived unconscious, you will drift through the afterlife in the same way, reacting, grasping, falling back into the cycle. But if you lived with awareness, if you trained your mind to see through illusion, if you prepared yourself while still alive, then in death, you will recognize the Bardo for what it is, a test, a transition, an opportunity. And that is the secret hidden for over 1,000 years. The reason these teachings were forbidden, because if people knew the truth, they would stop fearing death. They would stop wasting their lives on things that do not matter. They would stop being controlled by false beliefs, by religious institutions, by governments that use fear to keep them obedient. A person who understands death is a person who cannot be manipulated. Because once you see the truth, once you understand that this life is only preparation for the next, everything changes. The way you think changes. The way you act changes. You no longer chase temporary pleasures or meaningless distractions. You no longer fear loss because you know nothing was ever yours to begin with. You no longer cling to identity because you realize it was never real. And when the moment comes, when you take your last breath and cross the threshold, you will not panic. You will not grasp. You will not be pulled back into the cycle of forgetting. You will simply be aware. And in that awareness, you will have a choice, a real choice, to break free or to return. Most will never reach this point. They will move on from this video, return to their routines, forget everything they have just learned. And when the moment comes, they will be unprepared, but you don't have to be. If you've made it this far, then you are already different from most. You are already seeking, and that is why we go even deeper inside Insights Academy, where we reveal the knowledge that cannot be shared here. Join now at the link in the pinned comment and receive a free copy of the Keelan, because your mind is the only thing that determines what happens next. If this video resonated deeply with you, tell me below what part of this ancient wisdom hit you the hardest.